Hello, hello, happy Sunday, and welcome back. You are tuned into Words Beat Some Life, as you know. We are right now, it's Sunday, so we've had a number of shows today. This is Beautifully Uncomfortable. It's our seventh episode. As you may know, this is a talk show that hopes to bring a new level of awareness to trying or confusing topics, however uncomfortable it may be to listen to watch, to share, and or engage. But the hope is that a beautiful understanding will emerge for panel members. And we're joined by an esteemed panel today. This episode and is a conversation that will be on tied into the 50th anniversary celebration of hip hop. And as we're celebrating the 50th anniversary and birthday of hip hop, we are discussing sort of the cultural context and whether or not is 50, are we in the middle age? Is 50 relevant still? Where are we in the middle of that right now? What does that mean for us? So let's bring in our esteemed panel members. And then we'll let them introduce themselves, and then we'll continue. And just to give you a little bit of a caveat really quickly, we are having a bit of technical difficulties for some folks, so there will be additional panel members who are not going to be immediately here as they get a chance. So bear with us, and thank you so much for sensitivity around that. But let's go ahead and bring in the panel. Wonderful. So Damu, we have you first. Let's go ahead and I think we've got several others. I see Oso Fresh there, I see Grindstone. Let's go ahead and do a round with you since you're first on my screen. And then if you can introduce yourself briefly and then pass it to Oso Fresh next. And you may be muted or maybe it's on our side.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, I was muted. My name's Earl Damu the Fudgemunk Davis. I'm a recording artist from Washington, D.C.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And the humility is there. We're going to get back into a little bit more about you. Oso Fresh, introduce yourself. You may be muted too. Okay, I can't hear Oso Fresh, so let's see if Daryl, if Grindstone can introduce himself, and then we'll come back to. Yes, we can hear you great.
Okay, what's up? I'm Grindstone. I am a multimedia artist. I do art. I make 25th year doing that, and current solo album. So
you were cutting out a bit there, but I'm just recapping. Multimedia artist, in addition to being a solo artist, and you do a number of mediums in hip hop, as you mentioned. So just kind of recapping that. And then Oso Fresh,
yeah,
let's hear from you. And you may be muted. DJ Oso Fresh, I think it's muted. Like I said, bear with us. It's Sunday. We have, times from here to here. Stay with us as we kind of narrow it down. I'm just going to say, just as if I can even give a brief overview of Oso Fresh, because he's been a critical member of the hip hop community, is a DJ, producer, a graph artist, a b-boy, a vinyl enthusiast, a collector. Also has been super instrumental to many people's sort of journey in terms of being a sound architect and maybe even curator for a lot of our DC hip hop scene, and groove kind of provider for a lot of that. So yes, I know he will eventually, as sound gets better, we'll come back to that. But as I mentioned, this show is sort of grounded in celebrating the 50th anniversary of hip hop. So I wanted to get started with talking about hip hop as an origin. And we in the definition of it, which is more of a scholarly definition, but I find that everybody has their own definition of what hip hop is for them, whether it's a genre, an art form, a culture, what is it, right? So what the scholarly definition that I found was that it's hip hop is an art form created by Black and Latino youth in the mid 1970s on the East Coast of the United States, which we know is now represented throughout the world. The form's core elements, rapping, DJing, breakdancing, and graffiti art, are now part of an ever-growing and diversifying range of artistic, cultural, intellectual, political, and social practices, products, and performances. So today we'll be examining where we are today and reflection of the last 50 years, and we'll touch on some interstitial moments that have defined hip-hop. I just want to sort of give a keynote to our multi-hyphenate panel, as I mentioned, has deepened expertise across each of the ranges. So from rapping to DJing and breaking and graffiti, all of those particular elements, and the scholarship. Oh, maybe I thought I was a little bit. And then also we'll talk about, before we wrap, we'll spend some moments talking about the future of hip hop and where our panelists believe the culture will go next. So now that we've got a little bit of introductions, I wonder if the first kind of conversation that we might have is acknowledging the origins of hip hop and what it means to each of us. And Pinky Killacorn is here. So let me have her introduce herself as well. Pinky, we're so awesome to have you, babe. How are you today? I can't hear you. You might be muted.
I say I'm
the
okay.
Default mutes
I'm
people
dealing with
for some reason.
loss of my father, so I'm here, but I'm trying to.
Oh no, I'm so sorry to hear that. Well, we are sending love to you, and please, everybody is sending love to you. I know that is not, that's a very tough experience. So my heart goes out to you for that. And thank you for even joining us today with all of that happening. So love and light to Pinky Killacorn. Please, everybody, if you can send your condolences to her in this tough time. Let's as we sort of get back into this definition, I wanted to kind of take a moment to ask each person, and Oso Fresh, I wonder if maybe we could start with you since your phone wasn't working before. And what does hip hop mean to you? What is it? Is it a culture, art form? Is it a genre? What is it exactly?
Hopefully, can you guys hear me?
Yes. Sounds like you're
fantastic. Sorry about that. So I've always viewed hip hop because I was involved. I've always viewed it as a culture, and as you mentioned, subdivisions of it. B-boy, and breakdancing, and graffiti art. The MCs and the DJs obviously, all play a part. Depending on the, which area you're looking at, there may be people that question how it originated, but ultimately, like you mentioned, early 70s, those new culture that spread throughout the world. So I've always looked at it as anything.
Yes. I want to take and give some space if anybody else wants to add anything to that. Does anybody have any differing opinions or maybe have to augment on that in terms of how they think of hip hop? Is it a culture to everybody? Anybody?
All
right, let's look.
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Grindstone, that sounds like you.
Yeah. Hip hop is a lifestyle to be who you are, because but the bench what other people expected of them, and hip hop is the current efficient way us and live out loud. It's the before hip hop really existed. So it's a whole lifestyle beyond music.
I'm I'm glad you said that, because it gets me kind of to our next point about if we are truly, if that, a lot of people have attached the other pieces, and we've heard sort of those other interstitial things around. Now it's these cultural and intellectual and political and social things, it's products, it's, you know, these artistic moments. So if we take time to think about that, sort of the full range of the experience of what hip hop is, I wonder now, you know, we are in a place when this was a radical new music when it was first introduced. We know it came from a socio-political experience, right? And so conveying the experience of youth that were from the inner city, and their voices being channeled throughout, whether that was in art or whether that was in dance. And so now that's on a global stage. And as such, has that changed? Is it still radical anymore? Is it still socio-political anymore? Many people will argue that it's not. That's run its course. Hip hop is now sort of commoditized, and it's now, is it still a culture because of that? Has it evolved, or what is people, you know, what do people feel about that? Anybody want to take a stab on that piece?
Well, I think understand hip hop, different elements. You got graffiti, DJ, you got street, you know, the fashion, you know, you got the entrepreneurship hustle, you know, you got boxing, but like nine elements to go to hip hop. So the hip hop got modified. That's not represent the absence of hip hop. It just represents the evolution. But hip hop will always have is to be who they are. The room for the current event, like thing happens, whether it's the thought, the style, the thing happens, and then.
Daryl, let me ask you this, because we're capturing some of your audio and some of it is leaking out. Can you log off and log back on for us?
Okay.
Come right back in and see if it might make a difference. Let me ask Damu, while you're on, maybe you can talk to us about that. I mean, you've been all across the world, as everyone else here has. I wonder, one of the things that we hear oftentimes is that everywhere outside of America and everywhere outside of the US, hip hop is still, there's still so many purveyors and curators of hip hop in its much more sort of pure stance and its much more purest form. Why do you think that other cultures or outside of the US is hip hop still so, you know, celebrated in its most purest? And hear me.
Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
I would say, you know, from my experience, and I guess I should start by saying I'm able to. I spent enough time here before going abroad, experiencing the evolution of hip hop, you know, through my own experience as a participant and also like an observer. I, you know, well over a decade before I was able to actually go overseas and see firsthand, in person, how hip hop is represented and how it's respected and so forth, or digested, and also I guess reappropriated or reinterpreted in some to some extent. So I would just say that in my observation, it's more about I guess the general cultures of those countries or places abroad. The general culture is that they just, from what I've seen, there's just a bigger appreciation for culture in general. So so that could be from cooking to just art, you know, artisanship, any art forms, just in anything that is, I guess, that we would define as culture. The general culture is that they appreciate things and they study it. They understand there's an origin. They understand, that there's quote unquote rules, or there's folklore. There's there's like a membership, and even if you don't necessarily personally identify with those things, there's just a respect that, hey, this is an art form, this is a culture, and it should be valued just like any other culture. So I think that the culture here in the States, I think hip hop also has an underlying ego that goes along with it, because hip hop is not just the culture, or there's a spiritual component. Hip hop is a spirit, part of, I guess, putting yourself up front, honing your skills. You're going out into the world, trying to make something of yourself, coming from something from nothing, to rags to riches, or you're taking something and reinventing it and then presenting that to the world. There's a level of confidence and ego that has to go into that. But then it's the same spirit of even just living here in America. It's like every industry, as it evolves and it's integrated with technology and it continues to embrace those things, so does the philosophy and the general mindset that changes. So a lot of the things that hip hop is known for culturally here, we've somewhat outgrown it. It's always been the new and the next thing. And if you really think about the parallels with a lot of the foundation, especially in the States, that seems to be a pattern, from
Yeah.
from blues to big band to swing to jazz to gospel. All of these things have had their place in all of, like you said, these socio-political things that trigger the creation of these art forms, that trigger the inception of these cultures. As it becomes something that becomes commercialized, or that can be industrialized, those things become disposable then, and or just evolve in a different kind of way. And I think that is the difference, just in general, of how, just in a general sense, we appreciate culture here, just in general, versus how they appreciate cultures in general in other places.
Yeah, you said a lot of different things, and one of the main things I feel like when you said something I have not heard here, or even in a lot of other places, around hip hop being a spirit. And that makes me think of, like, there's tenets, or a doctrine that is attached to that. And hip hop in many ways does not have it doesn't have a single text that is, says this is the tenets of culture. Doesn't have a Bible or Quran or Torah or Bhagavad Gita. It's not a religion. It doesn't have sort of a philosophical kind of framework around it. But maybe those things are not written, but I guess they're there. I wonder, I know Oso Fresh, I feel like I've seen you mention this a lot on in social, just kind of around about, like, being able to accept the fact that, like, where we are today is an appreciation, but there's such a interest in maybe distancing people when it's, oh, we got to do something new, we got to do something revolutionary. You do have a music framework that is built for that. So what do you say to that, around, like, when everybody wants to innovate, but you have a culture of innovation to do with it?
Where do I begin? I find myself in a lot of discussions on social media with different people, and just to piggyback on what Damu was saying, hip hop, there's a certain level that goes along with hip hop culture and appreciating its history. And unfortunately, it's become too commercialized to the point where concerned about is making the maximum amount of money possible. Not even just making money. Everything just kind of feels like it's quick access, and a lot of that doesn't exist overseas. They still form, and I think that's where a lot of those differences come from. Generation of people who call themselves, for example, rappers who wouldn't be able to things about the history of hip hop, and they don't care, and it's sad. The other side of that is that the elders don't hold them or to learn or to take time to teach them. They just kind of like, in my opinion, it seems like they just kind of let them benefit. It is borderline destructive to the culture, just so they're not called and that they can stay relevant within the younger generation. And the fine line, you have to hold people accountable. You can't just let people just willy-nilly do whatever they attribute it to hip hop. But unfortunately, that's where we are now. I'm sorry, I may have gone off topic a little bit.
No, thank you for sharing it, because the RBI put a question in that I thought was a really good one around, can hip hop actually go commercial in some regards while staying radical in others? And you approached that and answered that question as well. I wonder, Steph Lova, we have not had you on screen yet, and I wonder if you could introduce yourself and then check in on that too. Can hip hop actually go commercial and still be built in this radical framework that it was set up to be? Or be true to that? Oh, and I think we may have lost Steph. We lost Steph. Okay, so no worries. Grind, you want to take this one on whether or not can hip hop, is it able to be commercialized and still be radical? I mean, there's a lot of that happening now. I feel like there's now a bit of a convergence where we're seeing people appreciate that. You want to speak to that, whether or not what you've seen, and is it even possible?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, and you sound so much clearer.
Yeah, I was on my phone. My phone was on something, now I'm on my computer. Hip hop can be commercial. Hip hop could be underground. Hip hop can save us, and hip hop can kill us. So I think the existence of commercialized hip hop, I mean, the NBA is commercialized hip hop. That's probably the biggest example of hip hop going mainstream is the NBA. So I don't think that there's anything that hip hop cannot do. So I don't think that like Ja Morant, who plays for the Memphis Grizzlies, he got blinged out teeth and earrings, and he just got some Nike shoes and all that. He wouldn't be able to do that without Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson wouldn't have been able to rock his style without hip hop. And so I think that hip hop can occupy many spaces successfully. And if anybody tries to box it in, they're making a mistake. And it's a futile effort, because hip hop being the biggest participator sport of all is the kind of thing where if you don't like something that's going on, then you do your part. But it's not about taking that other thing out, just add on, do your part. There's no better example of that than Drake. Like when Drake first came in the game, he faced resistance from everybody who was holding the hip hop flag. Everybody. I mean, the blogs, that everybody was talking about Aubrey, right? But now it's really hard to talk to 10 people who are fans of hip hop, and none of those people like one Drake song. And I got my issues with Drake, right? But there have been multiple occasions where a song was playing, I had to go up to the DJ and be like, "Ooh, what is that?" And it was Drake, right? So like, I just think that he occupies a unique space. MC Hammer occupied a unique space. It's hip hop is broad, and we don't know how big and bad it is yet. So I just think that if we don't like something, then we just need to add our part on rather than stopping something else. Because if our part is valid, then it'll show.
Yeah, you made a good point. I think I like that how you broke it down in terms of, is it not just commercial? It has power in what hip hop can do. So it's an influencer at this point of trends and of culture. And I always like having this straight conversation, because I always wonder, at the end of the day, someone did tell me at some point in time, like, but he's a traditional student of, he was a critical listener before he even was rapping. So he's much more of the blueprint of kind of the way that, you know, people came into the game. He had, yes, a lot of other, you know, expansive kind of commercialized vehicle behind him, but was a great, you know, he listened to Biggie, he listened to Tupac, he listened to Tribe, he listened to, you know, did songs with Little Brother. He really was a student of the culture. But we'll get back to that later. I know we have a question. We don't have a lot of time, but I want to get to this question because this is such one that remains at the top of my head all the time as a parent now, and as a hip hop listener and a parent. But is there so much violence and sex in the music from the younger generation? We do tend to see that. It seems like it has grown. Has it always been there, or is that violence and sexism and misogyny increased in hip hop now that it is sort of in the place it is? Steph, we lost you right before, and I see you're on.
I know, my bad.
Thank you so much for joining.
Wi-Fi area.
Yes, tell us what is your opinion on that? Because you've seen this all of these different eras coalesce, and you're curating this, you know, all these different young folks, and you're in these spaces. Do you think that is, you know, who is it, more sex in the music and more violence in it now, or was it always there? We just missed it.
Definitely more now. I mean, because the visuals are more predominant now. You know, back then, I mean, the sexiest as it got was probably, you know, in a Luke video or something like that you see on BET After Hours. And as, you know, as a parent, like, I think it has shifted, because I heard somebody say earlier, it's big money involved. You know, when there was no money in hip hop, to me, it was pure, it was positive, it was uplifting, it was stop the violence. And then when it became $1 billion business, you know, you got to feed the machine. And, you know, nothing sells faster than sex, violence, and hip hop, you know? And, you know, I think as a parent, you have to monitor that. Like, you know, you want to give your child, my daughter's 15, you want to give them some freedom, but at the same time, you want to have some barriers, because it is just way too much information, just way too much. And, you know, Instagram and them, they think they slick by putting the blurry thing before, you know, you can click it. That just makes a kid more curious. Like, yes. Every time I see one of them, I'm definitely gonna click it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I do believe it has gotten way more misogynistic, obviously. And then again, I have to go to the social media and the visuals, and just the obsession with trying to get clicks and be influential is nonstop.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. I mean, I feel like as a parent, I'm constantly compromised between what I let my kid listen to, and we don't, you know, I don't encourage listening to the radio. I feel like it's just not a thing that my son is 12, so I don't allow him to. But then there's so many things that I feel like at his age, I was able to listen to, and I was, you know, learning, and quite possibly didn't even realize what it was. And even now as an adult, I look back and I go, there's certain music I can't even listen to anymore, because I just don't subscribe to those tenets anymore. Now that I know what it was saying, I definitely don't want to hear it in my, you know, don't want to put it in my body. I don't want to consume it. So I wonder, when we start, you know, coming into this sort of consciousness now, you talked about a key thing around the commodification of hip hop. And now that it is there, where we have to continue to make this music that pays dividends to people. So is socio-political things may not be, it has to evolve a bit. We have to go into, but the idea that we're now going from maybe keeping people out of violence and promoting the moral breakdown of youth, and, you know, tarnishing maybe what were the original elements of it. And I wonder, you know, we see that in a lot of the music aspects, but what about in the like fashion, in the DJing, and sex and violence, I notice, are in the rap part. So that's one element of the culture. But I do see now there's DJs who, are kind of fist pump DJs. There's people who don't even DJ. They just press the button. They're naked with the bikini. Paris Hilton, I just saw her DJing recently with the bikini, and having a good time at some celebrity wedding. And the whole elements of that was just like, let's have fun, let's get naked, let's take our clothes off. Where does it go? Is there hip hop? I'm sorry, is there influences of violence and sex and all of those types of things in the other elements of hip hop outside of just rap music?
No, so look, okay, so in 1991, Boogie Down Productions album was titled Sex and Violence, right? So the issue with sex and violence isn't new, and nobody's ever going to end sex and violence. So sex and violence is always going to happen. I think we run into a problem because hip hop does run fashion, and now that white people understand that, and people all over the world understand how much of a piggy bank the black community is, they have infiltrated fashion, beauty, all of that, and they use hip hop to sell it. However, what we need to understand is that the more people enter hip hop, whether it's Paris Hilton or Poindexter across the street, the more that brings people to understand hip hop. And when NWA or like all that, it was on 60 Minutes. It was like, what is this thing? The more that people know, the more it gives the hip hop tastemakers or the people who do hip hop, it gives us more of a gateway. It widens our driveway to drive our vehicle in the house, into every house, because people understand the language now. People are looking for it now. It's not such an odd thing to wear sneakers into a meeting. It's not such an odd thing now to say, you type in a text and you say y'all, or hip hop. The more people add on to hip hop, the more it allows this participator sport to be the participants who are pure. They're going to find the refined section. So the refined section doesn't have to worry about the unrefined section. They're bringing people to the house. But the question is, what are we doing in the house once they get there? And I think that's where a lot of hip hop purists fall off, because they try to keep people out of the house. Meanwhile, they're not doing nothing to the house they're trying to protect. And if you are, the people gonna find you.
Right. Okay. So that's an interesting conversation. I wonder if Oso Fresh and Steph Lova, you both had a little bit to say about that. I wonder if you can respond to that. And also, there's a question here from Words Beats and Life asking: is there a marriage between hip hop and shock factor that encourages sex and violence? So, as though those two things go hand in hand. The more, I can have blood in my shoes and dress as a demon on stage, whatever those things are, that we know that's going to be a vehicle of shock for people in the audience. Is that go hand in hand with hip hop? Is it all about shock value? And is that why we're seeing more of it? But I wonder if we can talk about sort of in addition to Grindstone's question as well, or his statement as well. Steph or Oso Fresh, you want to take that first?
Some of the audio got when Brother Grindstone was speaking, so I didn't catch the tail end of it. But he mentioned something about Boogie Down Productions had an album called that's true. That was the title of the album. But the music on the album was some violence. They were educating people as to how some things in the industry work and what direction television and media. They weren't encouraging sex and violence, whereas now goes. So I think but there is some shock value to that gimmicky. People feel like they need that to get attention. Like if you guys remember that song "WAP" that came out.
Yes.
Nothing that I'm interested in remotely listening to. Like and I've had discussions with people online. And they're like, well, why you don't like women or something? What's wrong? It's like, I love women, but I also respect women. And if they like that, I don't necessarily have to be a part of it. But that's my personal opinion on that. So, but yeah, the shock file definitely a part of it to kind of grab people's attention and else.
Yeah.
But
No, so Oso Fresh. This is all right. So I think that you particularly feel an important role in the whole hip hop pantheon as a crate digger. And I think that the fact that people could go to one of your functions and it's going to be absolutely necessary to have their phone on Shazam, I think that you need to just do what you do because you do it so well. And you don't have to worry about a thing. Like what you do is very necessary. And so like if little Pootie comes in with a pistol and shoots up his friends on YouTube, you don't even have to worry about that part of hip hop. You keep doing what you do because what you do is serving a community of people who truly appreciate it. And I think that's like,
thank you.
I think a lot of people get off their game worried about who's the next Chief Keef and how they're gonna mess up everything. But the only way they mess up everything is if we don't do our part, if we don't offer an alternative, And so hip hop is so big right now. Mm-hmm. Man, everybody gonna put their foot in the game. Everybody, it's kind of like if you take how R&B used to be. Everybody wanted to sing or pretend. I mean, I remember 8th grade talent show. Man, me and my friends like we was New Edition. Nobody was rapping, so like everybody, we couldn't sing, but we tried to dance and sing. So like it's never gonna stop. People are always gonna try to add into the popular thing. And when it comes to shock is shock. So there are people who are affiliated with hip hop who don't even rap no more. They just try to shock you. At that point, it's no longer hip hop; it's popular culture. They made a move. So, but I think the shock value of hip hop is when somebody is doing something that's real. But when they're acting, they become, when they're faking, it becomes pop. A Kardashian could do it. Jackass, that television show like back in the day, that was shock. Shock is always going to exist. And, sometimes hip hop tries to shock you, but at that point, it's no longer hip hop.
Right.
Steph, I wonder, that was a really interesting turn too, because I feel like we've now gone into, we've said several times, and I've heard Oso Fresh say it now, it started out in the conversation around like, what is the role and responsibility even of elders in addressing the direction and providing standards or some sort of tenets of the culture? Because I've heard now that it seems to be at least an unspoken responsibility. Do you feel, Steph Lova, what's your opinion on that? Are the elders supposed to be teaching and educating youth on what?
Yeah, just real quick, just to piggyback before I even jump into that, I started out in hip hop. I used to intern for KRS-One. So I kind of got a bird's eye view. And this was probably like at the height of his popularity. I literally was an intern, got lucky. And, I saw a lot of the behind the scenes. And really, Chris is brilliant because Chris used those catchphrases, those trigger words, I should say, to draw audiences in, to educate them. It was like the old bait and switch. He couldn't bring them in per se on, come learn something. You know what I'm saying? It was the sex and violence was like, what? And then he had him, and that's what that was about. And what you said about the shock value, even, back then, it just seemed like nowadays we're numb to it. Like somebody just said, outside of hip hop, like Charleston White, like I watch him and he just stirs the pot, and controversy sells. Again, this is called show business. Let's not, forget that. A lot of people want to try to keep it real and this and that and a third, but this is $1 billion business now. And the bottom line is profit. And that's how they think. You know, what I love about it is that so many artists are independent. They don't need the machine. They don't really necessarily have to, bend at will. If you're smart, you hold on and wait for the right deal, the right situation, and then you can profit off of it and not have to be a slave to the rhythm and hope somebody nice enough to throw you a bone. That's where I'm at with it. But I think it's about empowering yourself. You know, um, as an elder in hip hop, I'll teach if they willing to listen. I'm not gonna beat nobody in the head to listen. I'm not gonna beat you in the head to save you. You know, if you're not gonna, take this information willingly, I mean, what can I do? I'm not here to spoon feed you. You're not my child. I do feel a responsibility when somebody comes up to me and asks me for advice or to point them in the right direction, but I do not feel like I need to hold everybody's hand. We're all grown here, unless you're not. And hip hop nowadays is a combat sport. If you're not built for it, if you don't have the team in place, then it could get brutal. So, to the youngsters, I welcome it. What you need? How can I help? But sometimes they come at you with so sideways and with such, impossible demands. You like, come on now. I worked to get this far. You could put a little more effort into it.
Yeah, I think that's all important too. I feel like when I got started, there was no elders to teach me because it was just train the trainer. It was what I learned from my peers and my community that was around me and my cousins. And, you ask questions and then you meet people of like minds at community events and or who are freestyling on a corner or whatever. And it's sort of I guess maybe it's a paradoxical existence of just like I find people because I'm seeking them out and but it wasn't elders, the elders were teaching me in their material. So I had a blueprint to, so to speak, to go off, and there was a lot more range. And I think now, at least from what I've seen, the range has dramatically decreased. I mean, there's not a lot of people that are giving options. So the music is very uniform sounding. It's like everybody wants to do a drill beat. I wonder, or everybody wants to have, a type X type beat. I gotta have this particular. Damu, I wonder. There's a question here about core values that we should be sharing to the younger generation in regards to hip hop. What are the types of tenets? And you spoke to about hip hop being a spirit. And how do we, infuse that? The central, what are those sort of notions of authenticity that are central to the spirit of hip hop? How do we convey that to the youth? Oh, you're mute again.
Well, so much has been said. I mean, I don't even really know where to start, how to answer that question when it comes to core values, I guess. I mean, because on one hand, if we're talking about things being conscious or there being a message or coming from a real place, if you're looking at some of the the younger generation, whatever it is they talk about, whether it's sex and violence or things is political or just making a fun song, like using Daz effects, for example, like with pop culture references and just my hip phones connected to just nonsense, but fun records, Special Ed, I Got It Made. A lot of the imagination that was originally in hip hop has been robbed. Special Ed can make a song like I Got It Made and tell you how he's living and with dreams of changing the situation, but actually not really living that. But hip hop has gotten to a place where it's so literal and it's supposed to reflect the things that we're going through, and the audience is under that impression that these rappers are living their life, whether they're rich, whether they're committing crimes, whatever it is. So really, I think just culturally, it's just how people choose to live their life in their personal life, and some of the values that's in the community, whatever's going on in the community has found its way into hip hop. And then also because the media and hip hop has been integrated, just like the media and any other art form has been connected. When you think about hip hop as a culture, hip hop is now a pop culture, right? So when we think about sex and violence or whatever the messages is, You think about jazz or big band and swing. Let's look at Barbra Streisand. Let's look at Frank Sinatra. Let's look at Motown. Right. At one point, that was becoming pop culture. That was what was the people's lives, or the music reflected how people was living. You know, people were trying to. There was class. There was a certain amount of dignity. There was a certain amount of stuff that would the FCC would stop certain things. As we've evolved, things like shock value, things like sex and violence, all of these things is accessible just via the internet. How we share information, how technology has integrated the whole world, even the slang. Hip hop used to be regional, or the way we speak, or the things that all of that stuff is now, the world's a much smaller place. So when you think about values and messages, it's really a matter of what we're feeding ourselves just as a whole. So if people are seeing violence and the media is sensationalizing that, you know, the media is celebrating dysfunction, the media is celebrating radicalism and protests and all of those kinds of things, it's gonna find itself where people now can make money off of that. And the media is pretty, like Steph Lova said, is show business. You know, and hip hop started out as a showman, you know, the showmanship era, your Dougie Freshes, your BDPs, your LL Cool J, you know, and as Grindstone said earlier, when he got into a talent show, he was aspiring to be like New Edition. But then now, if people look at where hip hop has gone, and the violence and the sex and all the negativity, now if you're a child getting into it, when I got into it, I'm looking at DJ Premier, and I'm looking at Gangstar, I'm looking at KRS and those types of things, and all the rules that was exported to me and been exported around the world as a culture. Now the people that import or digest these perspectives, these values, to go out and be participants, they're pretty much just replicating what they see. And funny enough, I'll close with saying this. Dougie Fresh had a line in the song called "Everybody Loves a Star," right? He says, "You know what? I'm not mad at you. You're just doing what you're seeing the next man do." You know, so really, I guess when they say art imitates life, life is really imitating the art that's been peddled to the younger generation. So whatever issues we value is what's going to be represented, and what the media can capitalize on, and then also just in general what people is attracted to, and that's just across the board.
Yeah,
you know, and so like I had the other day I posted on my Instagram a picture of my high school Letterman's jacket. I posted a picture of an outfit that I actually wore in 1989 and 1990. I've had the jeans and the jacket. And everybody was like, "Damn, that shit is drip. When is that coming out?" And I was like, no. I was wearing this as a teenager, you know. So hip hop is bigger than just the music. It is in the fashion. It is a commodity. And when people were saying, "I want that," I was like, it's also the job of the elder. I got to teach these people how to dress. You know what I'm saying? And it's without beating them down, but let me be the example. You know, let me be the let me walk y'all through it. And it's I think you know, for rappers, for graffiti artists, for people in fashion, for people who are doing like a business that might not be conventional, I think it's the elder's responsibility to show how it's done so they could do as you do rather than listen to what you say. And you know, Nas's album, he said representing is illmatic, right? Meaning that if you do it, you got to do that thing for real. You know, and it's like, so whatever we like, the age group has not removed us from being responsible for being raw. You know, so like whatever it is, you still got to be the shit at what you do if you do live hip hop. Like if you are current in your hip hopping, you still got to like I said, don't be shy. I dropped the jacket figure. It's funny. No, but if you still are, if you're like really, really about the culture that you say you're about, then you got to be about that. Represent your shit in a real way and don't live in the past. Like, how ill are you now? What are you doing now that's really the shit? And so, like, it's the elder's responsibility to still be the shit and not to take up residency in the past and not be like flexible enough and fly enough to exist now. Because otherwise, your dinosaur bones, your artifacts, you know, it's cool to have that part, but are you real live right now? And if you are, then you are indeed hip hop, and they're gonna learn from your example. And that,
Yeah.
I'm summing up a lot of shit. But then that shit right there is fun. That's where the fun comes in. You know what I'm saying? If you really live right now, that shit is fun.
There was a question which Rhinestone added in there, and Damu added a little bit around space and freedom for fun, and where does that lie? And I like the fact that you pointed to. I don't know if kids want to hear from somebody that's not relevant to them and what they're doing. Right? I watch anime, and my son started to watch anime, so it's very much following. But now he listens to rappers who are anime rappers, who many of them I know personally. Right? So I'm going, oh yeah, you know. You listen to Shingo too. I don't know how you learned about this person. I don't know how you know who New the Best is. I found out that he was listening to those people because he came to share with me because he knew that it's something I was doing. It was like, oh, Mom, you watch anime, so you know who all these people are. But I don't know, that allowed us to have a more conversation grounded in today than like this Grindstone, as you said, where he felt like whatever I was doing before was like, that's something I don't connect to. I don't know what you old people do. I don't want to do that. But now it's very different when it's grounded in anime for him. So I wonder in the idea of that around youth-based and being at least being trend aware, not necessarily following that. I know we're a few minutes away from the end, and there's a great question here that I wanted to get out before we leave on what is, where do we go for the future? What's the forecast on how the future is going to evolve in the next 50 years versus 50 years? What do we all see forthcoming? Steph, let's start with you. What do you see forthcoming in this next 50 years?
Learn from our mistakes, not repeat the past. It's a few things. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's so crazy that it seems as if we learned nothing from Scott LaRock to Big to Pop Smoke to, it's like, when are we going to learn? Like, this is definitely a commodity. And if we keep messing it up, they're going to take it away from us. They're going to find out. So hip hop is already on trial right now. So you know what that's doing? That's going to make the record labels a little bit more careful about what they're putting out. And they're definitely going to try to put like a separation in between the business and the artist. Because eventually somebody's going to start suing these labels for enabling these artists by putting the music out that's causing so-and-so to, if we're going to put it on trial, we got to put it all on trial. And they don't want that, so I wholeheartedly, and that's the reason me and my bro, like, we do a lot of these artist initiatives. We don't charge, we try to make it as conducive as possible with our Industry Night Live events. And now we hooked up with the Whammies. We trying to make it inclusive for artists, so there is a way, instead of them trying to find a way by doing something crazy that'll come back to haunt them later. Because every one of those artists, for real, after it gets real, they change their whole tune. Now NBA YoungBoy is all about the peace. He got 15 records about killing everybody, and it's just like, when you know better, you'll do better. And that's what our job is. We gotta show them so they will know better, so they can do better.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Damu, I wonder if you can share next in terms of where you think, where is hip hop going in the next 50 years, and what in your vision is it headed towards? And I just wondered if anybody else has seen anything, because it's the 50th anniversary, but it's also Black History Month. And for an art form that is, or a culture, as we said, which is very much rooted in Black culture, I've not seen enough about. I haven't barely even seen Black History Month iconographs out there. But anybody else, has they seen that? And do you want to talk about, is there any particular connection between hip hop and Black History Month? We're in February. I saw a source cover, I think, that came out, but we can get to that. We have a little bit of time extra. But Damu, you want to share a little bit about what your vision is, or what you think and observe for where the culture is going for over the next 50 years?
To be honest, I mean, it's someone that that makes music and has been traveling for quite some time, well over 20 years. Like, pursuing a music career that I currently sustain, you know, I ask myself this question all the time, just as a recording artist and also just as a fan and observer, listener. And to be honest, I, I usually don't have an answer, and I'm pretty much just looking to see where it ends up, because uh, a lot of the things that might have, a lot of the dialogue or the whisperings that was around, like, since hip hop's inception, right? Hey, it's a fad. It's not gonna last. You know, hey, this ain't gonna stick around that long. Or hey, you can't rap and sing, or you can't make a female friendly song, or you can't curse in a record. Or all of these things, all these barriers have been broken down. Oh man, you gotta have rhyme, you gotta have lyrics. You know, well, now you go, you know, you can't have violence. You can have, so it's like there's been so much throughout the course of the evolution, even just to see where hip hop now, like, as I said earlier, it's just a form of pop culture. It's pop music, but also it's just integrated in technology, and technology drives the world. It drives every art form, and the reason hip hop has been able to accelerate the way that it is because the people, or any culture, anybody that has access to technology has always ended up at the top, and you can see that happen around the world. So as just generally as a world culture, I think hip hop is now, it is a global culture that has everybody connected. So I guess creatively, I don't necessarily know what that is, and also a lot of its evolution is rooted in things being disposable. So as we were talking about elders, you know, from its inception, hip hop is going, oh yeah, we was rhyming on drum machines, but now we got to rhyme. Or we was rhyming on two turntables, now we're rhyming on drum machines. Now we're sampling. Now we're using break beats. You know, now we're using hi hats. Now we're not sampling. Now we're doing this. So, uh, and then even when you think about Busy B and Cool Mo D, you know, respecting the elders from its inception, it's really been disregarding the old and embracing the new. So it's like, as we can talk about KRS or this artist or this act, and with the role between the youth and the elders, uh that's always been a part of hip hop, is things outgrowing something and moving in a different direction. So at this point, 50 years later, and all the integration of ideas in music and
I'm on
dialogue
a
in
conference
music,
call, Mom.
I have no idea
By the
where
time
it's
mission
going.
might be over.
You know, I can only say that it's the world's just going to continue to get smaller, and some of the things that are run synonymous with hip hop, people are probably going to forget that they're rooted in hip hop. You know,
Yeah.
Even some of the slang that we use, like even the term, hey, we say something's cool. It's just general lingo, right? But we don't know that it, you know, came from maybe the jazz era, or somebody says something is lit, or somebody says word is bond, or somebody says mad, or whatever. You know, like these are things that, you know, 5%ers or some of that stuff now that's very synonymous with hip hop. A lot of that stuff in the next 50 years, people aren't going to realize or recognize, you know, that those things have their origins in hip hop culture. Even making beats. You see this MPC behind me, like
You see
every genre of music,
this whole
every well, no, I'm just saying every genre uses one of these. You know, you can go to somebody's living room, and one of these used to be a specialized piece of equipment. It's now a piece of consumer equipment. You can buy this at a at a Target or Best Buy. You know, not exactly, but that's, people know what this is. So I think that hip
yeah.
hop is no longer going to be called hip hop. It's just going to be called pop music or pop culture.
No, interesting. Well, I want to add on to this too, because I did mention about, you know, whether or not I had seen a lot, but I forgot the Grammy tribute. And I wanted to add it into in the next person who answers, who I love to be Grindstone, because you're just next on my camera.
All right.
What do you think about the 50th tribute from the Grammys? Because I've heard a lot of mixed reviews. And then in terms of where you think the next 50 years will be going.
Well, like Steph said, don't repeat our mistakes. I think for hip hop to have waited on the Grammys to throw a tribute, it was a big old problem. And I think it's the problem that hip hop continuously makes in looking for validation or looking for a platform for those who don't inherently support hip hop. And so I think locally, nationally, and internationally, regionally, hip hop really needs to deal with those who are not out to exploit them. And a 14-minute Grammy tribute for the biggest music that actually runs the commerce of the Grammys. You can't expect more from the Grammys, but that's hip hop dealing with the Grammys. Hip hop needs to deal with itself. And one of the elements of hip hop is entrepreneurship, street business, the way you handle it, and not illegal, but it's just like somebody who figured out who put two and two together. It might have started with house parties, but now people are 50, pushing 60 years old at the peak of hip hop. It's time for industry to be a thing that could support hip hop itself. So we don't need Viacom and we don't need the Academy to tell us, all right, hurry up, rush on stage. Now it's your turn. BET almost had the right idea, but they just didn't have the right foundation because Bob Johnson isn't hip hop. He's not hip hop based. Puff is in bed with everybody, so you can't expect Revolt to be the one. But each step is a step in the way of progress where hip hop will own its own space. And I think that not learning or not repeating our mistakes would be in not waiting to please people who we know are out there to compromise us. And so in the next 50 years, I think we're going to get that right.
It sounds like there's some education still out there needed, though, too. It's not repeating mistakes means acknowledging the mistakes and maybe a little bit of accountability around it. We have made mistakes, and I'm not sure is everybody ready to do that. But Oso Fresh, let's hear from you, and also what your thoughts were on that Grammy tribute. I like what Grindstone said. We shouldn't have let people maybe outside of the community maybe curate it, although Questlove was involved in it, and yeah. Go ahead.
So I think Questlove did a good job with. I've never been a fan of the Grammys. I always remember the times where they pop. I'm old enough to remember that, and I won't forget it. Forced into accepting it, they would have those ceremonies off camera on national TV. I'm old enough to know that. I never appreciated that. So I'm not a huge fan of the Grammy contest. It's based on sales figures. It's not of the quality in hip hop. It's just mass produced, mass consumption fan. But Questlove did the best he could do with what he had. To properly have done it would have had to been over an hour because there were a lot of MCs left out. But you can't fit everybody's work for hip hop. You can't have representation of everybody. So naturally, some people were left out. But as far as where the next 50 years are going to be, I'm probably not the best person to ask because dreams I wouldn't have like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we would be in the state that we're in now. Whether some people appreciate it and others, where the quality is gone, the emphasis on lyrics, the emphasis on originality is gone. For the first 35 years of hip hop, you couldn't sound like somebody else. You'd get clowned for it.
Yeah.
But now, everybody, and it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Like Brother Grind don't have control over that. Hip hop is going to do what hip hop is going to do, and educate the folks that want to be educated. You can't like Steph said, you can't force. That's kind of like just like parenting. Like you set your kid down and say you're going to listen, but you show with example and take a different approach. They might be open to it. So don't know where hip hop is going to be in the next 50 years. It's going to become more pop than anything, just like it is now. I would like to see it go maybe a couple of steps backwards, where there's a little bit more emphasis on quality, and not just the latest fad, but because social, all this technology is involved, it may not happen. It may not happen. It's a fluid environment, and it's filled with a lot of people that are free spirited. And we just gotta in their lanes, as in do what you do best, not try to be like what Grindstone said earlier, and people to do what you like, do what you do, let them do what they do, and we have to. The issue that I usually have is there's no balance in hip hop. Like, the artists that are in, I don't even know half their names. Like, they can drop 15 songs a week, but a talented producer like Damu, he doesn't get that same kind of and there needs to be a balance. There needs to be throughout this thing, and then that way everybody can coexist. But when there is, it's hard to coexist because some people are getting kind of pushed out.
So here's a recommendation that I have.
Share it,
for everybody who really loves hip hop, for everybody who just love yourself and you're like really you obsess over music and culture and the art and the way it's displayed, then become a face in the crowd when somebody who you like or respect has an event. Show up. Be a voice that promotes somebody's thing when they're doing something. Listen to an album of somebody who you like before it gets stamped by the big publication. Be one of the 10 million that you want that person to reach. And then, if nothing else, the quality of your life will get better. You will have balance in your playlist. Like, you will have balance in your experience. And there's a lot of music out there. There are a lot of people doing a lot of things out there, like whether it's fashion or events, festivals, putting out beats, albums, whatever. Support them. And like, your life will become more balanced. And then you'll be somebody who encourages that person to do more of what they do, and they serve as an inspiration to more people who keep it real. And so, like, I think that waiting for the big publication to tell all of us what the thing is, I think that's where the purists make the mistake. And feeling like the big thing didn't validate us, I think that's also where the purists make the mistake, because we were waiting on somebody who we don't like to uplift us. And I think that's a failed strategy.
Yes, I love that, showing up and being the change that you want to see. There's nothing better than being the example of showing up for, we share things that we don't like. So do we share things that we think are dope and that we think are great? And then still, I feel like there's still a presence that needs to be set around. Do we also conversely say, or alternatively, say the things that we don't like? Do we illustrate why it's not like, I think Oso Fresh just did that and said, well, it's not necessarily that I disliked it. Here's the reason why I don't really enjoy the Grammys the way it should be, because it has missed the mark. It has not shown proper, attention and proper recognition for hip hop. Being able to say that and put that out on Fresh Fruit, I think, is important to itemize kind of where are the wrongs, and holding other people accountable, I think, is important too. So I think, and there was a note here around a plug for mental wellness around power in actions as well as words. But I would love to eventually talk about mental wellness and health and related in hip hop, because I think that is as we continue to celebrate the 50th, that is kind of where I would love to see this conversation go next, is to, like, what does it mean to be emotionally and physically and mentally well space, and can you be? So yes, I want to thank everyone. I know we went a little bit over. We had some technical troubles, but thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Again, this is brought to you Beautifully Uncomfortable by Words Beats and Life, who is celebrating Black History Month all month. They've dedicated this month to celebrating different stories and strategies and futures of the African diaspora across culture, leadership, and innovations. So definitely visit wblinc.org and take a look at the calendar and stay tuned for all the great work that is being done. And try to answer. Okay, so there's another question here that I think maybe as we're going out, maybe if we have just a couple seconds that we can add in here around this last question that we'll ask, and that is very much on. Wait, did I see the question here? The older generation. Oh, the celebrations. What did we celebrate over the last 50 years? So what do we find to be, we've talked a lot about the things that we did not love so much, but are there specific innovations that we have loved so much? And I know we talked about technology. I'm going to say that's one of mine because I'm so excited that I can use my DAW and I can use Reaper or Logic Pro to do everything I need to do at home. I don't have to go to somebody's studio. I don't have to go to out of my home. I can mix. I've taught myself how to do everything. And with YouTube, like I mix and master everything. I make beats now. It's a one-stop shop. So is there a particular innovation or something, some celebration or some moment that everybody has last word? And Damu, let's start with you since we just ended with done.
Oh, I mean, there's a lot of things to celebrate. But I guess I'll focus on these things. I mean, clearly, it's all over the world, and I mean, you can find them on every continent, and I don't think it's going anywhere. And then as far as like, I guess the things that run hand in hand with DJing, I mean, sorry, hip hop is something like DJing, right? I think the term itself, when you say the term DJ, it's different than saying a disc jockey or a DJ from, say, like, you know, the Petey Green era, you know, someone that's on the radio station, you know, personalities and so forth. Hip hop reinvented or redefined just the art form itself of DJing, you know, having two turntables and a records or you know, an MP3 controller, you name it. That has kept music and also just the vinyl culture alive when, you know, consumer products at the time, vinyl going from into tapes, hip hop kept vinyl alive all of this time to where we're seeing, you know, a resurgence. And even just the way that we mix and share music through the DJ, you know, being an educator or sharing things with the audience. I think the DJ is one of the biggest contributions just to music culture, and I think one of the biggest accomplishments in hip hop. And then you can go into the technology component of it, where you have things like, you know, beat machines and sampling and things that started out in hip hop that you can find in every genre of music now, that pretty much stem from house music to drum and bass to, you know, all of these things found their beginnings in hip hop, you know, reappropriating existing technology, you know, to create something that now is present elsewhere. And a lot of that comes from the foundations of hip hop's early days.
Thank you so much. Yes, I love that. Re-engineering things. Oso Fresh, let's hear from you in terms of what your favorite moments of celebration are, or things that you want to celebrate.
Wow.
I know that's hard to pinpoint over the last 50 years.
It is. I was just thinking that. I think with what I do, I hopefully I on a daily basis, based on what I enjoy, and I just you know, celebrate it from day to day. The innovation is great. Of course, it has its downsides too, because it allows people who would not have had access to the culture to kind of get in, and not all of them are talented. Unfortunately, it allows a lot of mid talent and mediocre talent to get into our industry. You know, I can speak from a DJ standpoint more so than, I mean, from MCing or the rappers. But it's all there. The more people get involved with it. It's good for the people that are that may not have had access to it prior. But unfortunately, the downside is that people that technically didn't belong there to get into that space. So the main things, like when Serato came out, that we were so excited about it, because before gig we would pack our record crates, show up at a club, 6 crates, 8 crates, only had what you took with you. I mean, naturally you took all the popular stuff that was hot at the but there was always something that you forgot or weren't able to get at the record shop, but you didn't have it. You had to wait 2 weeks to get it. So there was that element of it there. But then was always dreamed about having our entire record collection at the gig with us, and it was impossible to have anything musically we wanted, even genres where we didn't have access prior to have that at our disposal. So that aspect of it.
Thank you for sharing that, because I've heard so many tongue-in-cheek things, like people going, oh, you know what? Is it made people lazy? Is it allowed for people to be maybe a little bit or overly reliant on? So there's unintended consequences. I'm glad to hear pointing out the great things about Serato. And Grindstone, let's go with you in terms of what's your final words on what are those things that you're celebrating over the last 50 years that have really been incredible achievements for you?
The camaraderie that hip hop provided, the weird way that we're able to express love now. We're gonna have to grow into a better way to express love, but hip hop is such a touch point for emotion, because people really do love it. And I just like the fact that we're all collectively passionate about something that we're willing to protect, live for, and die for, in the horrible and good social ways that it exists, the way we express love. I'm glad we are not apathetic about it. So I celebrate the way that it allows us to love, and the ways that it allows us to express passion. Hip hop. There are a lot of people. Matter of fact, I was talking to Mano last weekend, and he said that he fell in love with hip hop when he was in prison, and he feels that hip hop saved his life. And you could talk to a lot of people who've been to prison and who have never been to prison, and they will share the sentiment that hip hop has saved their life. And for that reason, they love hip hop. So I really like the fact that this gives us something to truly love collectively. I just think we have to be better parents.
Yes. What does that mean to be better parents?
We birthed this thing, and sometimes we just throw it around, slap it around, and sometimes we love it, sometimes we care for it, but we're not consistent. We're like the drop-in parents. And I think the people who truly love it, who are really willing to wear it on their sleeve, you cannot compromise ever. There's never a cool time to compromise your morals. We always see people sneak in and slip in. We know they're not about who we are, but they might offer a check. And that's how the slipperiest slope always presents itself in hip hop. And I just think that that's us not being a good parent of our culture. And it bites us financially. It bites us morally. When we hand it over, when we give the keys to somebody who's a bad driver, they end up misteaching somebody else what it's about. And so I think that it's really time for us to be who we truly are. And last year, this is a shameless plug, but last year I recorded a song. It's on one of my albums. It's called Hip Hop Love. And I wasn't even thinking about the 50th year of hip hop, but it was just, I really feel I need to love on hip hop and record it. So if you look up Hip Hop Love by Grindstone on any one of the stream platforms, you'll just see kind of like what it did for me. But everybody has that thing where you love it so intensely, and people love hip hop more than they love their favorite sport. And I just think that we need to be able to express our love and nurture what we really love better. So
yeah,
I'm thankful that it gave us something that we can pour love into.
yes. I mean,
Do you
speaking of
mind
that,
if
it's
I?
like go ahead. Fresh,
I
please.
just wanted I just wanted to follow something up. I know that we don't have a lot of time, but just listening to Grindstone's comment about the love and camaraderie, it just made me think that you know, just say, you know, there's so many different opinions that's been thrown around, but just hip hop or the music business, you know, that's an industry within itself. But hip hop culture has created its own industry from, you know, we spoke about fashion to DJing to dance to art to, you know, you name it, to music. So it's like there's just so many, you know, sports, you know, it's found in so many different disciplines, so many different subgenres, subcultures, etc. But yeah, after 50 years, I mean, it's a huge economy where whether you're, you know, an independent artist or an independent designer, or and that's how a lot of people got their start. There's a lot of people that's where their lives has been changed, whether they went from doing crimes to becoming the first you know, entrepreneur, etc. You know, there's a lot of empowerment, and there's a huge economy where there's a lot of jobs and businesses been generated. You know, some for more the better than the worse. I mean, there's things we can argue, but for the most part, hip hop has changed a lot of people's lives financially and career and lifestyle wise. And I can say that I'm living proof to that. You know.
Yes, I mean, I definitely feel like that was a good note to say, is around love and camaraderie. And I think even as being in this space, be able to have, you know, scholarly conversation about it. I don't know if, you know, we have even embraced in this moment how kind of meta this is. It's all these different experiences, but this is very grounded and lived experience. Everyone in this panel has been a creator and an artist and a purveyor and a tastemaker or an historian of some sort, even down to the production and the fact that this is on Words Beats and Life. It's a hip hop nonprofit, working to transform lives and communities through elements of hip hop culture. So it is very kind of full circle in all that we're speaking about around hip hop has come very far and has a long way to go. So it is important to celebrate it and have these moments for discussion to just sort of determine, yeah, what are those things that kind of are not so maybe wonderful to celebrate, and how do we embrace those, be accountable to them, and also make sure that we're looking ahead to the future to, as we said, not repeat those mistakes, and also at the same time celebrating our successes. So thank you so much to our panel. Thank you, Oso Fresh. Steph Lova joined us, Damu the Fudgemunk, and Grindstone. And also we want to also just send condolences and expressions of love and light to Pinky Killacorn, who joined us for a time on the loss of her father. And prayers, and she's in our prayers and thoughts. And please definitely do send your thoughts and prayers to her separately if you can. But thank you again so much for joining, everyone, and happy Sunday. This again was brought to you by Words Beats of Life, beautifully uncomfortable.
Thank you.